All right, Laker fans, the heck is going on this Saturday morning? If you guys just thought we were just going to sit back and relax and there was no news from 10 hours ago, you're wrong. Of course, some news around Los Angeles Lakers basketball. We got a lot to get into. I'm actually, I mentioned it yesterday in the live stream that I was going to have Jovan Buha of The Athletic join the show, and just as planned, but with some curveballs involved. So first off, let me welcome in our guest of the day. Jovan, what's going on, brother? Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Hanging in there, man. It's been a long couple weeks going from the 12-day Grammy trip. We were in 6 cities in 12 days, 3 different time zones.
Jeez.
And then coming back, you go straight into the trade deadline, then into the Kobe statue, then a back-to-back, and then now the Spencer Dinwiddie news this morning. So I'm looking forward to the rest of Super Bowl weekend and enjoying myself for a couple days.
By the way, that you're 100% right. There is a little bit of the fact that they don't play today and tomorrow. I think even Laker fans, I think there's a little bit of like, hey, can we just have a deep breath as well? Forget the people actually covering it and flying all over the place. So Jovan, you and I have known each other for a while, and there was a time obviously you were working at ESPN. So we got a lot that I think you and I will get into. I think this is something that I've been doing for the last couple of weeks, actually having guests on. So I do have some questions and would love to kind of have listeners know what some of your career path was and everything else. But we'll do that a little bit later because of the news that just went down. So there's a lot of questions that I do want to talk about in regards to the Los Angeles Lakers. So you had now. I know I was reading your tweet yesterday. So while I was doing the live stream, there was some interaction with D'Angelo Russell, and a lot of people were putting on the stream, "Hey, this is what Jovan Buha is putting out." And let's just put it this way: Spencer Dinwiddie. I know you're reporting this. Shams had put it out there. ESPN, Dave McMenamin, Spencer Dinwiddie to join the Lakers after clearing waivers. Is this a surprise to you? Is it not a shock at all? Just your initial thoughts of Dinwiddie becoming a Los Angeles Laker.
So it's slightly surprising only because the Dallas Mavericks could have offered him more money. And when you factor in the state taxes on top of that, it is a significant difference. So the Mavericks had upwards of $5.3 million available due to not using their full non-taxpayer mid-level exception. And the Lakers had 1.5 million. So the Lakers did have more than other suitors that only had a vet minimum contract, for example. Most of those were in the $1 million range. So they could outbid a lot of teams, but Dallas, the other rival for Spencer in this situation, had almost $4 million to offer him more. So I think that the fact that he picked the Lakers over the Mavericks, it says something about the recruiting job that the Lakers just did. It says something about he is an LA guy, so this is a homecoming of sorts for him. And it also says something, I think, about his potential role with the Lakers, where they haven't had that Gabe Vincent third guard, similar to what Dennis Schroeder was providing last year for them. And Max Christie is filled in nicely, but he's not a ball handler. He's not a double-digit scorer on a nightly basis. So to bring in a guy who is a season and a half or even less removed from averaging 17 points a game in Dallas and shooting 40% on threes in Dallas, and he's averaged 6+ assists in 4 different seasons in his career. Like, this is a legitimate starting level guard who's now going to be coming in as a third guard and might not even be closing games for them, most likely not. But to have that type of guy coming off your bench now, I think just from a talent perspective, purely, like, he is an upgrade. And then you look at the scoring, the size and athleticism at the guard spot. He's about 6'5", 6'6", good athlete. We've seen, he could dunk on people and do different things like that. So I think he just brings a lot of positive qualities to the Lakers backcourt. I also think it's maybe a sign that Gabe Vincent, they're not as certain about when he's going to return or just what form he can return in. Because I think if you think you're getting Gabe Vincent back soon, you might not need a Spencer Dinwiddie, right?
Sure.
There's a bit of a logjam there. So it also, to me, kind of speaks a little bit to that. But I think it's overall a really solid move. I probably as good as anything that they realistically could have gotten on the trade market. Like maybe I think Royce O'Neal maybe fills a little bit more of a need for them, but aside from that, Spencer is a solid, clear rotation player on a playoff level team, and I think it's so I think the money was the one thing I was surprised about. Once I found that out, the Dallas could just offer 4 times as much, basically. That's a big difference. But the fact that he chose LA, like I think it shows something about the Lakers brand and just their ability to sign guys even when the money is not in their favor.
So I'm going to give a little context to this. And if you're just joining the chat right now, we appreciate it. Any comments that you guys have, feel free to throw it in. Obviously, if you guys don't mind subscribing to the channel, greatly appreciate that. Super chat's open as well. To hit on what Jovan just said. So the Lakers, about $1.5 million is what they will pay for the remainder of the season. So you're right. There is a significant gap there between what the Dallas Mavericks could have offered, who, by the way, is also a team that's in front of the Lakers in the standings. And it's not like they're 7 games in front, but they are in front of the Lakers. So I think that if the question is, what's the upside between one team and another, maybe Dinwiddie is looking at the Lakers and just saying to himself, all right, if the Lakers do get in a playoff run, I feel like I can probably have a better shot just looking at last season, get to the Western Conference Finals. It has not been an ideal season for the Lakers by any stretch, but I think you're right. Maybe it's more of a need, what his role could be, and then what the upside could be moving forward. It's interesting. We both were listening to, this was on Thursday, Pelinka talked. He addresses the media. And I know one of the questions was basically, what type of player are you looking for in the buyout market? And there was no hesitation. We want a backup guard. And he said if a backup guard isn't there, then best player available after that. But it sounded like, and even the Gabe Vincent stuff he mentioned, you hear Darvin Ham mention it all the time when he talks about some of the injuries. He's only played 5 games this year. And I'm with you. I have less and less confidence, and this is not me knowing anything, but I have less and less confidence thinking that they can rely on Gabe Vincent coming back. And I think Gabe Vincent, if he was healthy all year, maybe that's not a position that the Lakers are going after. But I do feel like that has a lot to play with it as well. And I'm just curious to get your thoughts because you touched on it for a quick second. Do you think that maybe within the organization there is that we don't know if Gabe Vincent's going to come back? If we got a chance to go get Spencer Dinwiddie, let's just grab him right now and address this.
Yeah. I mean, even when he does come back, he's going to be coming off of basically a 60-something game absence, most likely, because he's still going to be reevaluated at the beginning of March. So maybe late February, early March, and we're still a couple weeks away from that at a minimum, but more likely 3 or so weeks from his reevaluation. So if you look at that, like at that point, the Lakers have played, I mean, what they're 28 and 26. So it's 54 games. 2 to 3 weeks from now, you're going to be a solid 62 to 65 games into the season. So I think, from the Lakers perspective, it's just like, if we add this guy in now, like he's coming in cold, like there's a ramp up process. And we saw they've been conservative with certain guys when they come back from injury, be it Jared Vanderbilt or Rui Hachimura. So I think with Gabe, there's also the kind of the longer term factor of, this is a guy who's under contract for 2 years. They were just trying to trade him at the trade deadline. Everything I'd heard was their kind of most offered trade package was a form of Gabe Vincent plus multiple second round picks. And they were trying to find a way to upgrade that spot in the rotation and upgrade that spot just kind of in general, of like, if we can get a rotation guy and get that player ready now versus Gabe potentially coming back in a month or so, we'd like to get that upgrade now. But no one was willing to take on Gabe's contract. That there was a lot of apprehension about just him returning and Miami Heat role players and how some of those guys age. So I think the Lakers kind of realized we got to preserve Gabe sort of,
Mm.
longer term. And if we can bring in a guy like Spencer who can help us right now, I think you can debate who's the better player when healthy. But Spencer obviously has been a starter now for basically 4 straight years. He is a guy who's was averaging 17 points a game in Dallas, as I said. So like he brings an element that the Lakers don't really have off the bench from a ball handling guard perspective. And so I think he checks really both boxes for the Lakers of he's a ball handling guard and he was probably the best player available on the buyout market. So Lakers got the best of both worlds in that regard. And I do think though Gabe's health and some of the questions with that are a big part of this. And if there was some more confidence in him returning and him just returning soon and ready to go, maybe they don't go this path. But it has been a need for the team of when D'Lo's off the floor in particular, and if it's D'Lo and LeBron off the floor, and you've seen some of those Austin AD lineups, they haven't been as successful as the Lakers had wanted. So I think now you'll see Spencer in that spot running the offense. And again, I think he's someone who can at least steady the ship a bit and keep the offense afloat when guys like LeBron or D'Lo are off.
Dinwiddie, by the way, this year, so 12 and a half points, 6 assists a game in Brooklyn. He played 48 games this year for the Nets. Some quotes coming in from yesterday. D'Angelo Russell, I'm a fan. Talking about Dinwiddie and his game, but you will all get to know him soon. So obviously, D'Lo. By the way, my favorite yesterday, just during the broadcast, it's Pelinka and Dinwiddie sitting next to each other. I don't know when you saw that or when you saw him there, but I'm watching the game, on Spectrum, and then just out of nowhere, they're both sitting together. I was like, whoa, wait a minute here. I know I was hearing Dinwiddie's name being thrown out, but literally sitting next to each other during the game. When did you know Dinwiddie was in the house?
So I forgot. I tweeted it immediately. I grabbed my phone and started recording it and zoomed in on it and put out a video. I want to say it was like early in the second quarter, if I'm not mistaken. It was either late first, early second.
Yeah.
But it was funny to me because he just did the same thing
With
the night
Dallas,
before,
right? Yeah.
with Dallas. And, obviously he was playing for Brooklyn, so he was still in New York. So Dallas was in town playing the Knicks at MSG. And then he goes and sits behind the Mavericks bench and has this sort of, potential reunion floating there. And then next night is in LA. And you could just tell, like, he's an LA guy.
Yeah.
He was wearing Vans for those who care about that sort of thing. I mean, that's kind of a staple in LA and Southern California. And then when he walked by us, so he was in the bunker suites. Those are those new $5 million suites that are
That's where your season tickets are, right?
Yeah.
Yep. You have 2 there.
But
Jovan has 2.
Completely changed the media room and everything to add these suites that now you could go in and it's kind of a private thing, and you'll see like Selena Gomez, for example, has been someone who's been in those suites a few times and sort of isolated from fans. You got like guardrails and these different things, but so they pop up there, and then at the end of the game, less than a minute left, they walk by Pelinka and Dinwiddie and his agent, and they walk past the Lakers bench into the locker room. And the crowd starts going crazy.
That's fun.
And Laker fans notice him and start standing up and cheering. And like, I don't know if maybe the deal had already been agreed to at that point, but I felt like being in your hometown team, and having the fans react that way, like that to me was probably the icing on top of it all for him, of just like, this is the reaction I'm going to get from Laker fans. Like, I think my mind is made up.
Dinwiddie, by the way, is 30 years old. 10 years, I believe, in the league. This might be his 11th season. And originally, like you mentioned, Jovan, originally from Los Angeles. I want to read one more quote here because I think just kind of get a little interaction from some of the questions yesterday coming in. LeBron was asked about Dinwiddie and what he could potentially provide for LA. He said playmaking, another ball handler, another shot maker, another guy, another veteran. Anytime you can add a veteran with that ability, it helps. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, we already know what happens. Anthony Davis, he's a big guard, shot maker, playmaker. Obviously, we've seen what he could do with Brooklyn, what he's done with Dallas, making big plays for them. He's a well-established player. in this league. So I think this is kind of a good transition here. His actual fit and his actual role with the Lakers. I think, we've got a chance here these last few games, and I know it's not perfect because guys are in and out of the lineup, and this has just kind of been how the Lakers season has been. D'Angelo Russell balling out these last 30 days. No one should have any complaints about D'Lo. Austin Reeves, little kind of back and forth, but Austin Reeves, I think there's a good chance Reeves is going to be in games towards the end. LeBron, Anthony Davis, and yesterday we got to see Rui not just start, but Rui have a really, really good night. Can you explain to me how you feel Dinwiddie's role is going to be on a night in, night out basis? And, he's a completely different player than Dennis Schroeder, but I'm just using that as an example of Lakers had a little bit of a luxury last year because Dennis Schroeder was there. He could help out. Maybe D'Lo's not having a good game. Maybe you want a guy that's more focused on the defensive side. Specifically, Dinwiddie day to day. How do you envision him in that role?
Yeah, I think he's someone that sorry, I wasn't sure if I was on mute. Is going to be like a 20 to 25 minute a night guy off the bench. I think he's going to take a little bit of the minutes from D'Lo and Austin. Those guys have been, low to high 30s depending on the night. Maybe that comes down a little bit, closer to like the 30 to 33 minute range. And then look, I know some fans aren't going to like this, but I wouldn't be surprised if he closes some games in 3-guard lineups. We know Darvin had an affinity for 3-guard lineups last season. And, there were stretches, particularly when LeBron was out with that foot injury, where we saw the Lakers play D'Lo, Austin, and Dennis together, close games with those three, or inserting Lonnie Walker in there. So I think there's a chance that Dinwiddie, the thing with him that I like is he has legit size. Again, he's 6'6". He
Great
he
size.
has athleticism. And I think his defensive numbers have never been great, but he does have the physical tools to at least hold his own on that end in a way that I don't think like Austin and D'Lo are kind of always at a physical advantage. Like D'Lo is a bit slow-footed for a point guard. He does have good length. And then Austin, of course, people go through his chest and just it's a size and a physicality thing, a strength thing for him. So I think Spencer physically is an upgrade over those two guys. They just got to get him locked in and focused on that end of the floor. And I think having as many offensive weapons as the Lakers have, like I thought it kind of flew under the radar last night, but like having 5 starters drop 20 plus, first time a team has done that since 1993. So we're going back now over 30 years. And then first time a Lakers team has done that since 1984. Like that's very rare. Even in this era of insane offensive numbers, you do not see games where teams go, all 5 starters 20 plus. So like that just shows like those are the Lakers, in my opinion, 5 best players, definitely 5 best scorers, that starting group. But adding another guy who can drop 20 points on any given night, like I think it adds to the Lakers offense where like it's almost reversed now. Over the past month, the Lakers have had a top 10 offense and a bottom 10 defense. And the first 2/3 of the season, it was the opposite, where they were borderline top 10 defense and a bottom 10 offense. So that's kind of flipped recently. I think Dinwiddie helps in that regard in terms of just elevating the offense even more. But I think he'll be in that like 20 to 25 minutes. Maybe Max gets squeezed a little bit. We'll see what happens when Cam gets back. But also with the Lakers like revolving door of injuries and players, like who knows, right? Like it kind of fluctuates night to night. But Dinwiddie at least is someone that if Austin or D'Lo goes down, the Lakers would have confidence starting him, playing him more minutes. And I don't think they had another ball handling option on the roster currently with Gabe out that they could have said that about. So it does kind of preserve that where you're not going to see these lineups without any ball handlers that we have seen at different points this season.
Okay, so for those who don't know, but I'm sure everybody does, Jovan Buha, the Athletic, taking some time here to join the show on YouTube. So I greatly appreciate his time. We had already scheduled that we were going to have a conversation today. It was just going to be kind of a recorded one. We'll talk some Lakers, and then the news goes down about Spencer Dinwiddie. So I'm glad we're doing this. I'm glad we're doing it live. I start a couple of these comments here that I want to put in here. You know, I have very considerate people that are on the channel. So Francis wants to know, you kind of went through your own injury. How are you feeling here?
I did. Thank you for asking, Francis. Achilles is going well.
Uh-huh.
So I tore my Achilles mid-October, had surgery November 1st, and basically missed all of November in terms of being boots on the ground, had to cover
Mhm.
from home, and then been back to full-time travel since early December. So got the boot off a couple weeks ago. That was a nice milestone for me. And been kind of back to more normal walking. Like it's more tough on the road just because with flying and moving around a lot, it does get aggravated. It does get swollen.
Yeah.
Doing a lot of icing and elevating in my hotel room. But overall, I've been pretty much ahead of schedule for the most part, which has been nice. And looking forward to the next couple of days where I can just rest and not bother it too much as I tend to do at games.
I was tempted during a couple, when we were sitting down with Darvin before the game starts, and everybody wants to know, hey, how's D'Lo's health? What's Cam Reddish doing? A couple times I was tempted to ask Darvin, do you know the latest on Jovan Buha? What do you think? What's his recovery time? But then I thought I'd get kicked out, so I said, you know what? I'm gonna hold back on that one. Okay, a couple more comments here. Spell Legacy says, thank you, by the way, for the super. Anyone throws out a super, we really, really appreciate that. This changes things. This actually is a good transition to part of my next conversation. I'm not 100% sure how you feel about the Lakers right now. And it's such a roller coaster. It feels like game to game for the Lakers. And we're trying to figure out, okay, which team's going to show up? And yes, you can make some excuses and you could talk about there's been a lot of players in and out of the roster, but damn, they're all over the place. It could be down 30 against the Rockets. It could be, taking over against the Knicks on the road, 33-19, defense locking down. It could be even a really good game against the Denver Nuggets without D'Lo, and they had a chance to win that game. It could be pretty much controlling most of the game yesterday against a Pelicans team that's been playing some good basketball. So the question I have for you is, I think we can lay this out a couple ways. Best case scenario for the remainder of the season for the Lakers, and then just what's most realistic. Because I think it's very easy for a Laker fan to be discouraged and encouraged at the same time. How would you look at the rest of the regular season, and based upon the trade deadline being behind us, Spencer Dinwiddie potentially coming in, knowing that you're eventually going to get Cam Reddish and Max Christie back? The Vando piece is going to take some time. What are some of your scenarios of how you see where the Lakers are?
So I would say the best case scenario would be getting the 6th seed. I think that's realistically the best they can do. I just don't see them. I think there's a clear top 4 in the West if you just look at the standings and you look at the win-loss column. Like I think that top 4 of I'm not saying it in order, but let's just say Denver, OKC, Minnesota, Clippers, like those 4 have distanced themselves from the rest of the West. So I think that's going to be the top 4 in some order. Then Phoenix has been rolling. Some of the numbers with the big 3, I think they're off the top of my head, like 11-5 with those 3 together, plus 16 net rating, which is like dominant Warriors level net rating with those 3 on the floor. So like Phoenix has been rolling now that they've gotten a little bit healthier, and those 3 have been able to play a bit more together. So like I think that's going to be the top 5 in the West in some order. But I think the Lakers, if you look at the loss column, like they're only a couple games back from the likes of the Kings, the Pelicans, the Mavericks. So like they could, depending on how they finish the season, they could easily surpass those teams. So I would say my realistic best case scenario is probably get the 6th seed. You're matched up on the side of the bracket with OKC and Minnesota in some order. And I think they could beat Minnesota and OKC even without home court advantage. I think both of those teams don't have the same level of playoff experience that the Lakers' best players have. I think you can make a case that, like, I love Shea. I just submitted a mock MVP ballot,
Mm,
for Tim Bontemps and his, and like I had him number 2 on that. So like I think Shea's amazing. I think he's a borderline top 5 player, but in a playoff setting, you could make the case. I mean, Lakers have at least 2 of the best 3 players in a Thunder series, but you can make a case that like peak LeBron and AD with the way that they've played at times this season, with the way that they've played against the Thunder this season, like I mean, LeBron, in my opinion, had his best game of the season against the Thunder. That game in OKC that they won. So I think the Lakers could beat the Thunder. I think they could beat the Timberwolves as well. So to me, another Western Conference Finals run, then you probably run into Denver. And I think based on what we've seen over the past season plus, Denver's won 7 straight against them. Like they just have this ability to take over crunch time against the Lakers that LA just hasn't seemed to figure out. So I would say they get up to the 6th seed, they go on another improbable Western Conference Finals run, and they lose to Denver in a repeat of last season. Maybe it's a 5-game series. Maybe they even push it to 6, but
mhm.
I still think Denver wins that. So right now, based on what we've seen up to this point, to me, that's like the best case scenario, of course.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not saying realistic. And then realistic is probably 7 or 8 seed, and then they go into the playing game. Maybe they win that. I kind of like LeBron and AD in that like 1-game setting. We saw it in the in-season tournament. So let's just say they get the 7 seed. They play OKC or Minnesota, beat that. I think that again, I think I would pick them against either one of those teams. But then let's say they run into the Clippers in round 2. I do think the Clippers, with the way they played the last couple months, would be favored in that series. I would probably pick them as currently constructed, in that series, as long as they're healthy. And let's say the Lakers lose in round 2. So I think if they can get a 6 or 7 seed and get a favorable matchup, like they have a legit chance to at least win
Mm.
round 1. But it is tough to continually win series without home court advantages, or without home court advantage rather. And I do think that the top of the West, in my opinion, is better than it was last season. I just think that top 4 or 5 is deeper, and it's not as clear of a path to making a deep playoff run as it was last year.
Yeah, it's interesting, Jovan. It's I think your answer is kind of spot on, and I think there's a lot of people that feel similar about the Lakers. Hey, if they just make it, I think they could be dangerous, right? It's LeBron, it's Anthony Davis. I don't think. I mean, let's use last night as an example. You're not always going to shoot that effectively from the 3-point line. You're not always going to have 5 starters that are all incredibly effective. I get that, and New Orleans, who's actually a top 10 defensive rating team in the NBA, played 0 defense. So maybe some things just lined up for the Lakers. But there's always things that I think it's the fact that they have the track record of doing it last year, right? There's a little bit of a blueprint of them doing it last year. The fact that LeBron and Anthony Davis are on the team, you could never say, oh, well, they got no shot. Or even the way you described it. I don't think they're beating the Nuggets in a 7-game set. I think there are certain teams in the Western Conference you would like to avoid. I think things would have to hit perfect. Last year, you had the Minnesota Timberwolves play-in game where Rudy Gobert can't play because he's suspended. Jaden McDaniels punches a wall. His hand is fractured. He can't be a part of it. Who else am I think Naz Reid was injured at the time. They had a lot, and then they play Memphis, who had a lot of injuries. Then they play Golden State. That just wasn't bad. Everything clicked to get to the Denver series. It doesn't typically work that way, but I think, the next question I'd have for you is the upside, or how much more the team can just improve internally, because there has been a lot of times that you look at this team and they've underachieved. It's not just, hey, they don't have enough talent. It's not just, hey, they don't have enough players, but is there, without having to hit all these things that go their way, is there just enough talent on the team to go take on some of these big boys in a 7-game set and actually really make it a series?
I think so. I think when you look at, and this has just been my basketball philosophy over that I've developed over my lifetime, I guess. A lot of times in playoff series, it kind of comes down to like, let's line the teams up on a blacktop and let's just start picking players and see which team we're going to pick the more more
Most,
players
yeah,
first.
yeah.
And for the Lakers, like that to me is their advantage in almost in almost any matchup. Now again, there are some matchups where I think I look at Denver, I look at Boston, I look at the Clippers as three matchups, maybe even Milwaukee if they can kind of figure things out. But like those teams have the star power and or just that top end depth with like their best lineups where they can match the Lakers. But in most situations, Lakers are going to have at least two of the best three players in
Hmm.
any series. And a matchup like Minnesota, for example, they do have a lot of size. That they are the best defense in the league by a mile. But you can make a case like LeBron and AD could easily be the best two players in a series against Minnesota. Like I don't want to rule out Anthony Edwards. He has been on their level this season, but like when factoring in what we've seen from LeBron and AD when they raise their game in a playoff setting and in season tournament setting,
Hmm.
like those two guys could easily be the best players against an OKC, against a Minnesota. So I'm just using those two teams as an example, but like
Sure.
the Lakers have this ceiling that they can raise to with their two best players that I think makes them honestly a more dangerous playoff team than a night to night regular season team. And I think that's why there still is some optimism that they could go on a run even if they don't have home court advantage. Now, to me, the X factor moving forward is going to be Jared Vanderbilt. And the team released an update that they're going to reevaluate him in 3 to 4 weeks. But as you were there at the Pelinka press conference, there was a follow-up question about Jared Vanderbilt of, have you guys ruled out season-ending surgery? And then Rob kind of walked it back a bit of, well, until a player fully heals, we can't have that can't make that decision yet. So we are hopeful he's going to return this season and won't need that surgery, but we're not sure yet. So I've in the conversations I've had with people in and around the team, there still is some internal pessimism about a potential Vanderbilt return. And with the way that he was playing and just getting back to the Vando we saw last season,
Sure.
and the way like he single-handedly almost swung that first half in Boston just with his energy. He was all over the place. He was stealing
Tip
the
outs,
ball,
offensive
deflecting
rebounds. Yep.
rebounds,
Mhm.
like he was making threes and back cuts and different things. So like when he's on that level, there's no one on this roster that can do what he does other
Mm.
than like AD, but AD has other responsibilities. So to me, if Vando's out the rest of the way, or even if he comes back, has a setback, or just comes back and isn't himself, I just don't know if the Lakers have the caliber of perimeter defense you're going to want against the very best teams. Because again, looking at Denver, like you'd love to have, I know Vando got played off the floor, but at least situationally, you want him in certain aspects for that matchup. The Clippers, the Suns, even the Thunder against Shea, if they make the finals against the Celtics, like you need Vando and his perimeter defense in all those matchups.
Of course
So
you do.
if they don't have him,
Mhm.
it's a steep downgrade to Cam Reddish, Max Christie, Rui Hachimura, Torian Prince. Like I don't know if they can actually go on a deep run. So that's kind of to me an X factor right now is like what
Hmm.
happens with Vando? Does he come back? And that to me ultimately determines the Lakers ceiling, because if they don't have him, I don't know if they have the level of perimeter defense that they need against the best offenses.
Yeah, he's a specialist at what he does. So that's there's a reason why he has so much value. Just a couple of these here. Dinwiddie is a difference maker. Lost 0 players in the trade window and gained Dinwiddie. Some compliments here to Rob Pelinka. Here's another one here. I think Dinwiddie always imagined himself playing for the Lakers, and this was the best opportunity for him. That goes back a little bit to him choosing the Lakers over the Dallas Mavericks. Dinwiddie is perfect in the bench and will help balance the team performance perfectly. So lot of comments here. We appreciate you guys throwing those comments in. It's funny. Part of these last couple of days, and I know you know this better than anybody. It's kind of you're trying to figure out which topic to focus on because there's been so much going on. Um, Trade deadline came and it went. the Lakers pick up Spencer Dinwiddie in the buyout market. I thought what was interesting, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Pelinka talked so much about how they didn't feel like there was going to be a difference maker if they made a trade. Let's hold on to those assets. Let's wait till the summer. And then he mentioned that the amount of assets that they're going to have in the summer, the fact that there are 3 first rounders there. We've heard some names: Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young, not from the team, but just in general, of, hey, maybe these are players that can shake loose in the summer. I'm curious to get your thoughts. Were you surprised that Pelinka was so maybe open about the summer and, hey, you know what, we could shift our attention there? And do you have confidence that that is an avenue that the Lakers would take? Is it the smart avenue to take, to go out and try to go get another bona fide superstar? Just curious about what you made of all the chatter about, hey, we're going to have all these assets in the summer.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised about him specifically implying that they were going to go after a third star with mentioning we can go after a much bigger swing, and you don't want to shoot your small bullets when you could have the big bullets. So like, I wasn't. I think if you're not going to make a move at the deadline, you're obviously going to have to kick the can down the road to some extent and sort of say like, hey, we're turning our attention to the summer and we're going to do this and that. But like, there was a clear implication that we are looking for a third, star or a third high level difference maker over the summer. And now we're armed to go try and get that player with 3 first round picks. So the 3 names I've heard in talking to people are Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young, and Kyrie Irving. I think you can make a case for any of those 3 guys for various reasons, and you can kind of pick apart that case as well. With all 3 guys, I think having some form of question marks. I get it. I think the Lakers have been on this quest for an elusive third star, second ball handler next to LeBron for really since at least 2021. Like you 2019 they went after Kawhi, but he didn't really check. He checked the box of a third star, obviously, but not necessarily a second ball handler. But since 2021, I mean, they're going after Damian Lillard. They checked into DeMar DeRozan and Bradley Beal, ultimately settled on Russ. But since then, it's been, they went after Kyrie a couple times, weren't able to get him. And now, again, it looks like they're looking for another ball handler who can handle the load, run pick and roll with LeBron, take some of the burden off him. So I think depending on what they have to give up and what they can do with the rest of the roster, I think it does make sense. But my only fear is if you're basically recreating the Russ situation where it is like 3 stars and a bunch of minimum guys, and you have to unload all your depth, then like, yes, I think all 3 of these guys are better than where Russ was in 2021. They're all better fits because they all can shoot. And I think they can all play off the ball to an extent. Like for Trae, that's a bigger adjustment maybe than the other 2 guys. But like Kyrie, we've seen what he can do with LeBron. I think Kyrie would be like a perfect fit, at least offensively. And Donovan Mitchell, I think there's some similarities there, just in terms of like he can play off the ball as well. And
Sure.
I think, would be a really nice fit. But if you have to unload all your depth, I think you are recreating some of the issues that you had with that 2021-22 roster, where it was basically just those 3 and like all minimum guys. I think they had 1 mid-level exception guy. And then you saw again, like they go after Kendrick Nunn and like that doesn't work out. Now they've gone after Gabe Vincent. That doesn't work out. So you're not even assured that like the 1 mid-level guy that you get is going to necessarily even contribute. And like, that's just a tough way to build a roster. You're basically recreating the Suns model. And as we've seen, like when one of the 3 stars is out, the Suns have struggled and they've basically been closer to a 500 team. So you really have to hope that like all 3 guys gel perfectly, can stay healthy. And with LeBron 40, year 22, 80, 32, year 13, like there's no assurances there. So again, like I get it. And I think there's another path too that, I'm sure will be discussed at some point, but like, they could just go after, like, similar to the 2020 year, 3 stars, and then like, you have to they could use those picks to go get better role players. And like, if you can go get a Dorian, I'm just using Dorian Finney-Smith as an example, but like
Sure.
you can get that type of guy and like another type of guy, and all of a sudden you upgrade the starting lineup.
Mm.
And let's say you keep Austin and you bring in another guy. It's like, well, now we have a couple 3-and-D wings. We still have Austin, and like that team, to me, you have some continuity. You're just making some upgrades at key spots, and that team, I think, could potentially be just as effective as a 3-star build, depending on how you build the rest of the roster. But as we've seen, they kind of struggled with that in the Russ era, in terms of finding high level contributors that weren't making a lot of money. So that's my one apprehension with a potential 3-star build, is just you have to really hit it out of the park with the rest of the guys. And based on how they've built rosters the last few years, I'm a little nervous about like what the rest of the group looks like.
Yeah, it's almost more the model of KCP, Kyle Kuzma, using as examples. I know they're not the best examples, but you had depth. You had Danny Green. You had Rondo. You had plenty
Caruso.
of bigs. You had Caruso. That's right. So you weren't so dependent on just one player. And the question, I don't know, Jovan, but how much of that influence is also, well, Bron is going to be 40, and role players are just not going to be enough to carry a Lakers team, and that's the interesting position that they're in. And I don't know how much of some of this will be Bron saying, guys, we need more top level players, or and how much of it is also the front office saying, if we could land a Donovan Mitchell and sign him to an extension, we also have Donovan Mitchell and Anthony Davis post LeBron to kind of use as our foundation. It's a lot of question marks, right? And for them to try to figure out this summer, I just found it kind of fascinating that Pelinka was so honest about, well, if we did this, and certainly to go get some of those other guys, you're trading away some of the players that you have that are currently there. There was no real hesitation of that game plan, so I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and look, like they, I know from, I think outside the Lakers world, they got some flack from, anytime I wrote anything about Austin Reeves and the Lakers' refusal to trade him, it was always Austin Reeves. Like, why wouldn't they trade him for, they wouldn't trade him for player X, or they'll only trade him for an all-star. And like, that is Austin Reeves is objectively on one of the best role-playing contracts in the league. The fact that he's basically making mid-level exception money as a high-level starter is, it's something that's valuable. He's under contract for at least 2 more years. So the Lakers coveted that, and they didn't want to trade him for marginal up. They didn't feel like adding DeJounte Murray over Austin Reeves was really going to move the needle enough. Now that said, I think if you look at any of those 3 packages, I'm sure Atlanta, Cleveland, and Dallas would all be asking for Austin Reeves in a potential trade. So now you're kind of in this, once it's out there, it's like, all right, well, if you're willing to trade him for an all-star, like, here's an all-star. So the Lakers will have an interesting decision to make in terms of, would they be willing to put Austin on the table in those 3 deals? I think they would. I think they would have to, honestly, to get any of those 3 guys. And now you're building a package around Austin, matching salary, and then likely all 3 picks. Maybe they can haggle on like the protections or whatnot. But it's just interesting how he's kind of going from untouchable at this trade deadline to, well, this summer, you're probably going to have to include him in any deal. And maybe they won't. And that would be, I think, great on their part if they can find a way to not trade him.
Sure.
But I think, Atlanta wanted him in the DeJounte deal. I'm sure they would demand him in a trade deal, right? So I think that there's only so much the Lakers can do there. It's like, if you want this player, you have to give us something we want. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But it is funny how in February 2024, Austin can be untouchable, but come July 2024, he's probably going to be on the table.
IS says we have 2 of the best contracts in the league with AR and Vando. Must keep them. So that plays a little bit to your point there, Jovan. Appreciate the super there. Francis, will Jovan shoot the free throws like Kobe because of the Achilles? The Jovan I know, he's shooting the free throws.
Yeah. So it actually happened at the buzzer. It was it was really, so I was playing basketball on my birthday.
Okay.
Um,
How long ago is this?
This is
6
I
months?
can't do math. 4 months ago.
Okay.
And we win at the buzzer, and I take a couple steps, and my Achilles just pops. So I was like, it was such a bummer of a way to happen to. I'm like, at least let me do something cool, like I'm driving to the basket, or you know, I'm shooting a three and someone like closes out under my foot or something. But yeah, it was actually a celebratory injury. And it went from a high of like we beat a team that I really didn't like, and we lost to this team a couple times that season, and then I was super pumped, and then quickly realized that I suffered a major injury.
Well, my story is going to be with everybody here that it was a non-contact dunk on your way down.
You know what? Let's
on your way down.
that.
I want to roll with that one.
Secret. Yeah.
Okay. IS says here, 2 people. By the way, really appreciate the supers. 2 people I genuinely look up to. Keep doing what you guys are doing. Appreciate you guys. Hard work. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Okay. I really just got one more that I want to run by you, and as you could tell, a lot of people enjoying this conversation, and we appreciate all you guys on a Saturday here coming on the channel. What final one for me, and I think this one's kind of interesting. And by the way, we'll have to do this again where it's not a kind of breaking news type of show. And I really respect what you do, Jovan. We've had, kind of a chance to work with each other for how many years ago was that? We both, after one of the games, was it Lakers Clippers? We went to the Marriott there in the lobby, and I think we had a beer, we had some food, but it's probably 5 years ago, something like that.
Might have even been 2017, 2018. I want to say it was
okay. It was something like that. And you've been on a tear, and I
thank you.
I appreciate the hustle. I appreciate the grind. And I think a lot of people who follow you and see the work that you're doing, your trajectory is crazy. I love every time I see your name that's in the mix here with, some of the best in the business. When I see your name right there alongside with Shams, I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. You guys, your trajectory of where you're going and what you're doing. So, one of these days we'll do this again, and I want the kind of a little bit of the backstory and kind of how you got into it and all that stuff. Today was a little bit unique because we were planning on doing that, but Dinwiddie obviously signs with the Lakers, or it will eventually happen that he's going to land.
He clears waivers at 2 p.m. So
okay,
that's when it'll be official.
2 p.m. will be official. So that's why some of this went in. But the final question I got for you is, why does it feel like to me? And I don't know if this is just it's just a storyline that I've created in my head, but the Lakers have won 4 of their last 5. Why does it seem like these next 2 games before the All-Star break are really, really important to close out the game against the Pistons and then win this? It's never easy to go to Utah and play. Utah's right below you in the standings. Am I creating something in my own head, or does it feel like these next 2 and going into the All-Star break to have won 6 of 7, to be within striking distance of some of these teams in front of you, don't they seem very critical?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think in general, like right now, every game matters for the Lakers moving forward. They can't afford to, and I think that's why that Houston Atlanta back-to-back was so disappointing, because it was like you should have at least split that back-to-back, and the fact that you got your butts kicked in both games, really, and of course one game no AD, but still, like it should have been a little bit more competitive. I felt in that Atlanta game, but to kind of lose in that manner, what was so disappointing, which is this team not really having any margin for error moving forward because of that post IST stretch that they had, where they went 3-10. So I think, I mean, look, you can't lose to Detroit. Like that's just, sure. I know
hey, they're on a 2-game winning streak, and I was looking yesterday.
They're coming in hot, but
they've won 4 of their last 10, and they have a win total of 8. Is that not insane?
That's like as impressive of a feat that has happened this season, given how they started. But
Yeah,
you can't lose to Detroit. Like
sure.
that's like that should be a 20+ point blowout win. If the Lakers are serious and focused. Spencer Dinwiddie's debut. He's a former Piston. Like like that should just be a game. You take care of business. You put it away, especially because the next night is one of the harder back-to-backs in the league. Of you go to Utah, you lose an hour. You have to deal with people always talk about the Denver altitude and elevation,
Mm,
and you deal with that in Utah as well. It's not as drastic as Denver, but like you step outside and like you feel it, right? So you work out there, you feel it. So I think that is a tough back to back to go into the All-Star break, and you have several guys who are going to be going straight from Salt Lake to Indiana in LeBron and AD. You have other guys who are going to be thinking about what am I going to do these next few days? Lakers are going to be off almost a week. So that's another one where it's like, it's easy. You get down 32-20 in the first quarter. Like that's a game that can just spiral of like guys are starting to check out ready for
mm.
the All-Star break. So that's one to me that's going to be a test of where are the Lakers mentally entering this break. And if they can close out 6 of 7 and have some momentum going into the break, have some momentum coming out, they go back to Golden State first game
That's right.
post break.
Mhm.
Cam Reddish might be back. So like that's another big game. Which just Golden State has been playing better. We saw that they had that double OT classic a few weeks ago. Like, so I think for the Lakers, they have another big road trip coming up in March, and like you just there's no assurances that LeBron or AD stay healthy, that role players stay healthy. So like you need to take
Sure.
care of business with what's in front of you. So I'm with you totally. Like if they win both of these games, that sends a message of just where they're at in terms of focused and momentum and rhythm going into the break. Now, if they lose that Utah one, like I think it's somewhat excusable just because that is such a tough back to back. Utah is a really good home team, but I am kind of judging that one as like show me something, right? And
Mm.
they have shown you something recently with wins in Boston, wins in New York. I thought last night's win was great, but you got to continue that if you really want to get to where the Lakers hope to get to.
Okay, and I'm gonna squeeze this one here. Joshua Crockett says, are this will be their 15th roster spot, right?
Yeah. So
Okay,
to create an open roster spot, they'd have to waive one of their minimum guys. They have 3 minimum guys: Cam, Jackson, and Christian. Um, I think it's something they're looking at right now. I believe Biombo just got signed somewhere, or maybe signed a 10-day. So Biombo's a name that they had been attached to going back to last summer. A guy that they had an interest in for a while there. It was Biombo versus Christian Wood.
that's
Christian
right.
Wood was their priority, but
Hmm.
if they didn't get Christian Wood, they were going to sign Bismack Biombo. So at that point, he was a factor for them. Obviously, he's off the board at least temporarily. Robin Lopez is another name I look at as potentially a backup big who could play 8 to 10 minutes against a Denver or against the Minnesota potentially. But you would have to waive. I don't think they're going to waive Cam. Especially with Vando's
Sure.
uncertainty.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it comes down to Jackson versus Christian. You can make a case for either guy. Jackson has been playing really well lately,
Yeah,
but
yes.
I think overall this season, Christian has more of the name. He does, I think, have more talent overall. So that's a pretty tricky one. But I don't know if like is Robin Lopez really um a upgrade over either one of those guys?
Mm.
Could they go get like a Marcus Morris? And uh he's not a center per se, right? But he is, remember that role that Markieff had, and like Marcus has been the better brother for most of their careers at the professional level. So like could Marcus come in and kind of be a stretch 5 off the bench or play next to AD as like a spacing 4? Like these are the things that they're weighing. I'd heard all the interest was in Spencer Dinwiddie, Kyle Lowry. That's what I reported.
Mm.
I think, I mean, Rob maybe would have said another big man if that was an interesting for them. So I think most likely they're going to stand pat, but it is something I'm digging into over the weekend and trying to find out like what's the next move, or are they just done?
Looks like Biombo going to the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Okay, Thunder, yeah,
So he'll
interesting
be
for them that they need some
yeah.
big man depth.
Yeah, they'll land. That's another Western Conference team getting, obviously a little bit of depth there. Okay, Jovan, I appreciate it, brother. This was fantastic to do. Thank you for doing this. I know a lot of the people on this channel surely appreciate you coming on, answering some of these questions,
Of course.
and just giving your insight. So keep killing it, doing what you're doing. Thank you very much for taking the time. Everybody that's on the channel, greatly appreciate it. Hope you guys have a fantastic Saturday. Enjoy the Super Bowl coming up tomorrow. Please subscribe to the channel if you have yet to subscribe. So thank you all for tuning in, and hope you guys have a good weekend. Thank you again, Jovan.